Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Talking News. And guess what? Today is just absolutely beautiful. And I want to share that with you. And I might have to rub it into you guys that's up north because it is absolutely gorgeous today. It is in the 80s. Check this out. Okay. So I've got to tone that down because now we have to go to this horrifying story. So we're going to start with part 2 of looking through Kelsey's eyes, the Kelsey Barrett case. Now, if you haven't watched the first video and you know about everything, you're probably not missing a whole lot. But there are a few things that are in that video that probably are not in this video that covered some of the things we didn't know before. But this second video is going to be my favorite video of all time, if I can get it done. I've already messed it up once and had to redo it, and it's super long. And if I don't shut up, then this one's going to be even longer. So let's get to it. Okay, so we know that February 19th, there was a preliminary hearing, and we found out some really interesting things. But the thing is, they didn't cover everything that was in the affidavit. I'm going to attempt to cover as much as I can that I haven't seen so much of, and also my opinion of what I think I see in this. And I hope you share your idea as well in the comments below. So Patrick walks into the courtroom, and the judge frees his hands so that he can take notes. And as you know, a lot of us realize he's not one that's going to go down easily. He's going to go down swinging, and he's going to go down kicking. He isn't just going to swing. He is going to go for the gusto. So you can expect to see a fight during this trial as we move on and in the future. And what we find out is everything in court that day was very shocking to some of us, but mostly contradicting for those of us that's been doing the research, you know, compared to what we've heard through media, police, and other, you know, stories and affidavits. And one of those examples that I feel that all of us will probably remember is KRYSTAL showed up to court and says that she's a victim of Patrick Frazie's evil, you know, deeds, that she was she was controlled by him, and you know, and that she did tamper with evidence and hide the phone. But as we move on, we find out that that isn't the only thing she did. She had a lot more to do with this case than anybody could have ever really imagined. So really, she stood in court and said, you know, that she only tampered with evidence. That's what she pleaded guilty for. And as I research, you know, a little bit more deeply, I am not happy with that. I don't think it's right. And there's obviously a reason why they're doing it that we don't get. So I guess he would have got off completely. I don't see how, but then again, I maybe can. As I move forward, I will tell you why. One thing about KRYSTAL, she's a grand manipulator, and that is showing through her buddies that seem to back her story, but they are also the same people who ultimately didn't do anything to stop this murder that they knew was coming. So they're seeking sympathy for KRYSTAL, that's for sure. But as I read more into the affidavit, some of the stories, they're kind of not reliable, a lot of them. It's hard to know which ones are more reliable sometimes. But the affidavit, it was very difficult to read. It was kind of scrambled. It was very fragmented. I had a lot of trouble with it, to tell you the truth, probably worse than anything I've ever read. But I did manage to get some stuff out of it. And one of those things were the fact that when KRYSTAL being the first one to actually push murder. I want to cover something first, though. So I was reading an affidavit that Chad Lee, KRYSTAL Lee's ex-husband, said that Patrick Frazee and Crystal Kinney used to date back when they were in college. And he also said that they got divorced in 2018, which is not too long ago. Ironically, supposedly Crystal says that her and Patrick were starting things back, a relationship back up back in the summer of 2018. What's really interesting about that is Chad Lee and Kenny Lee are still living together even after they were divorced, raising their 2 kids together. And I'm guessing that's probably for financial purposes. Now, once Kelsey started talking with Patrick Frazee again, Patrick starts to talk about his concerns with his fiance, which is Kelsey Barrett. But referring back to the affidavit and things like that, Crystal says she had no idea who Kelsey Barrett was whatsoever, especially when she talked to the police. And the police wrote down notes about that, saying that she was very unreliable and, basically a liar. They start talking more and more, Patrick and Crystal, and he starts to tell her, he's uncomfortable with the fact that she drinks a lot and that he feels like she's going to be abusive to his daughter. He really don't trust her as a mother. Then he says, I wish there was a way to get rid of her. Well, guess who said, started this? I believe she was just as guilty as Patrick, because she says to Patrick, why don't you poison her? And these little tips that we're getting doesn't indicate fear. It indicates that she's seeking approval. She's seeking love any way she can. And of course, later on, she's trying to put all the blame on to Patrick. But I couldn't help but think about this when I heard the poison mentioned, because I'm a Game of Thrones fan. And you remember there's a part in Game of Thrones where they say, poisoning people is a woman's way of killing people. I'm not saying that this is Game of Thrones, but it made me think of that, and it put some light in my day after looking at this dark story all day long. But if you think about it, it's really true. Women do not want to hurt other people normally. And the majority of them, it's in their DNA. They are mother hens. They are there to love you. They do not want to hurt you in most cases. So poison would seem more, that would fit the fact that she brought that up. Then I read that she also said that she was able to get a hold of the whatever kind of chemical she would need or medication in order to poison Kelsey Barrett's favorite beverage, which turned out to be a Starbucks caramel coffee. I probably got that wrong. My memory's not that great. You can correct me. I don't mind. But it was a coffee, right? And it would turn out that Patrick would agree that that was a good idea. But something that, something that really showed me her character was the fact, she was offering these drugs to Patrick to kill somebody. Patrick didn't say, hey, do you have some drugs I can have to put in her coffee and try to kill her? No. Crystal offered this. She provided it. And so this changes your outlook on how you see her. She is a manipulator, and she will do anything for love and attention from the man she's always loved, which we keep hearing. She's loved her, Patrick Frazee her entire life. I think Patrick was very excited to hear this, and I think he knew at that moment he could use this to his advantage. Now, this all began around the end of September and the beginning of October. So anytime that we are referring to any of the murder plots or plans during this this recording, we'll just reflect in between the end of September to, let's say, October 15-ish. So shortly after that, Crystal and Patrick have a meeting. She drives to Colorado and they discuss their next step and murder plot. Now, a lot of this information that I'm getting is sources, affidavits, and so it may not be correct yet because we're still kind of new into this. We're not getting solid information, so it can change at any time. So supposedly the plan is, according to Crystal, is Patrick initiated this. Her idea initiated this, that Crystal get to know Kelsey Barrett on a personal level as a neighbor, and disguised a ruse, if you will. In fact, I really believe that we should change her nickname to the Ruse. You know, come up with an identity of some type and find a way to interact with her to where she could give her this toxic-laced coffee. Now, I want you to think now, I'm reading the affidavit, and it's at the beginning of the interview when they're interviewing her, she's saying, I don't know Kelsey Barrett. But here she's discussing how to get to know Kelsey Barrett better. I guess it's sometime later. We don't really have dates on this. Crystal willingly and supportively plans to go to Starbucks, buy Barrett's favorite coffee flavor, then go to her house, knock on the door, and she comes up with this thing to where she's going to reward Kelsey for helping her with dogs, supposedly out in the rain or something. We can't get really clear answers on that, and it doesn't make sense. But it was for a reward of some type and some way of helping Crystal. And what I read from this is that Crystal shows that she's capable of lying to your face and is deceitful, you know. So she sets up the plan. She actually goes to Starbucks. She actually buys the coffee, and she actually drives to Kelsey Barrett's townhome. And something I really couldn't believe she did. She actually knocked on the door, and supposedly Kelsey Barrett opened the door, accepted the coffee. We don't know what happened with anything really during that time, really, other than Crystal says she did not lace the coffee. She backed out. She couldn't do it. Now, remember in the affidavit and in the court, Crystal says that she feared for her life. But I seen this as I read the affidavit, and it says that Crystal then calls Patrick Frazee up and tells him that she's not able to do it. And she wasn't able to go through with it, actually. And Patrick's response supposedly is basically there'll be another chance. So he didn't think it was a big issue, and they actually got together to make plans for a second murder plot. So my thoughts are that he seems pretty calm about it. He doesn't seem very angry the way that she described him to be. I think he thinks that she just don't have the guts to go through with it. And, you know, they get together and make another plan. And this time, Patrick tells her that he has I think it's about a 2-foot metal pipe at his house. And Patrick tells her, you know, you can take this pipe, hit her in the back of the head. That way she doesn't bleed much. Now that's an important thing. I want you to pay attention. He's really concerned about the blood. So she says, but Patrick is a farrier. He's a cattle rancher. He's, he's a big guy, a tough guy. And Crystal's the nurse. I would have, I'm thinking the way things are going, the way she's pushing everything towards Patrick, and it comes back to her. Now I'm starting to wonder, with this quote about the blood, this would seem something she would say more than him again. And Patrick says to her, after you hit her in the back of the head with the metal pipe, then throw her body in the trash. Well, it turns out that Crystal said that she wasn't able to do that, and she ended up leaving the pipe on a gate at his house. I'm not certain which gate, it doesn't say, but she says she backed out of that as well. They get together again and plan a third attempt. And Patrick Frazee tells her, I'll give, supposedly, I don't know if this is fact yet or not, but this is what I'm reading. Patrick gives her a bat, tells her to go to Kelsey Barra's townhome and wait for her to come out and whack her with the bat. And Crystal did not do that either. Now, for a girl that doesn't want to do this, she keeps coming back and keeps coming back. I mean, she's traveling 12 hours to come see him and talk about murder. Supposedly there's a fourth attempt, but she just backs out of that one immediately. Crystal gave great details for the first 3 attempts of murder, but when they asked her about the last one that did bear thin, she just did not have any information to give, really. I mean, as how she was involved. And this is because, she doesn't want to, make herself look any worse than she already does. And she doesn't want to make it even harder. The less you say, the better it is. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and start going into the story. So, November 22nd, Thanksgiving Day, Kelsey went shopping at the Safeway right down the road from her, maybe to buy some rolls or a few things for Thanksgiving dinner. And this is approximately around 12:30. Approximately around 12:45 through 1:10 p.m., Barrett hands off Kaylee, her daughter, to her fiance, Patrick Frazee. Okay, we're assuming that Kelsey heads home, but Patrick actually heads to Walmart to buy, we think, possibly scented candles. And sometime between 1:10 p.m. and 1:40 p.m., I think, Barra's neighbor surveillance camera catches an image of a man that looks like Patrick Frazee going into Kelsey Barra's townhome. The affidavit also reads that they caught the same guy, they believe, back at her door around 3 p.m. that day by security camera. Investigators were able to also connect some of the phone tower records, and they said around 12:30 p.m. the phones were traveling together, and also later that day. Now, Patrick Frazee is inside Kelsey Barra's house, and he has scented candles, and maybe even his daughter. And he talks Kelsey into letting him put a blindfold of what we're hearing is a sweater to cover her eyes, and I guess test the scents of the candle. What I find kind of ironic about that is I'm not saying all guys do not like scented candles, because a few do, but older men especially are usually not into that sort of thing. Crystal is saying that she didn't know about this, but it sounds like to me that she did, because I don't think Patrick would have come up with this idea of scented candles to distract Kelsey for what he does next. While she is blindfolded with supposedly a sweater and smelling candles, he grabs a bat, swings it, smashing her face, sending her tooth flying, and blood all over her townhome. We don't know how many times he hit her, but we do know that she is dead. Kelsey Barrett trusted this man, and she is now paying the price, and so is her family. Crystal says that Patrick calls her out of nowhere, and she was surprised. We don't believe that, right? Calls her on November 22nd, the day of Thanksgiving, and tells her to get here now. She has a mess to clean up. Crystal Lee says that she ends up having to borrow a friend's black Volkswagen Jetta. And she also has to tell her ex-husband, Chad, who lives with her, that she was helping a friend and going to a birthday party, lying again and manipulating again. She then proceeds to put together a murder cleanup kit, grab some fresh clothes, possibly even a burner phone, I would think. That's not fact. I've read that she did get a burner phone, but I don't remember where. She drives from Idaho with her murder kit, and she bought hairnet, booties to cover her shoes. She brought bleach and trash bags. There's one thing I wanted to cover. Patrick also seemed like a manipulator. We're going to flip back for a minute. He must have been really planning a really long time, or maybe not, I don't know. But the story is this, is he took Kelsey Barrett's gun because he and Kelsey, according to Cheryl Barrett, had an argument about finances, and supposedly she threatened to shoot herself. And that was back in 2017, and he took her gun. At one point, I think Patrick Frazee says that they were breaking up at the inn here, and she asked for her stuff back, and the gun was one of them. Patrick Frazee did try to play Kelsey as having, serious addiction problems and mental problems. But when her mother looked into it more, the only thing she had been treated for was depression and anxiety. So it wasn't anything like Patrick was saying. My point is if this was true and he's wanting to kill her, why didn't he just let her keep the gun and allow her to shoot herself? It just doesn't make sense to me how all this is playing out. But it was August 2018 that Kelsey was actually having a little bit of struggle with depression. Now, Crystal finally arrives, it's about 12 hours to Kelsey Barrett's townhome. She tells Slater, an investigator, that she opens Kelsey's door, and when she did, the scene was horrific. Crystal says there was blood everywhere, quite different from the previous ideal Patrick had, according to Crystal. Do you remember? With the metal pipe. Supposedly, Patrick said for Crystal to hit, Barrett on the back of the head to prevent bleeding. But now, here we see in this scene, she says it's horrific and there is blood everywhere. Patrick doesn't seem to be so worried about blood this time compared to the plot they had with the metal pipe. And one thing that really put a red flag up is she doesn't ever seem to be very devastated by it. And you'll see in a minute. In fact, you will see where she goes, after it's all over, she goes to Sonic. You know, she has a healthy appetite. She just said the scene was horrific. She walks into the townhome. She sees blood is everywhere. There is large bloody fingerprints on the walls. Her statement says that the bloody fingerprints are just everywhere. Supposedly, she was there 3 or 4 hours cleaning the place because it was so bad. And one of my comments from another video mentioned this before we ever got this out. She had already read it. And to her, she just did. I mean, a lot of people don't think that makes sense considering what all she had to clean up, because I'm going to go over it here. She said that she ended up having a white blood from Kelsey Barrett's daughter's toys. Cookie cutters, which means those cookie cutters had to been out. She was probably, Barrett was going to probably cut cookies with her daughter for Thanksgiving. You know, it's just so sad. They just totally slaughtered Kelsey Barrett, and possibly the daughter, we're hearing rumors, was in the other room. Yes, you heard that right. There's a possibility that Patrick slayed the daughter's mother to death. And yes, I used that slay word in the correct meaning. It's not meaning to own or to win. But what gets me the most is the fact that she went to Sonic right after cleaning that mess, and it's horrific. So I'm going to tell you, if it was me or if it was you, what would you do? I mean, how would you feel if you were, you know, you're in fear for your life, you're upset, you're horrified and scared? I doubt food would be on your mind. I can tell you right now, I would most likely be sick on my stomach, my heart beating out of my chest. I don't know. I just probably couldn't even finish that job. I'd probably pass out. I know everybody's different. Comment below and tell me. So how would you handle it? Would you be able to eat right after seeing something like that? Crystal functions just fine and manages to make it through the day without any issues. At that point, she says Patrick put Kelsey's body in a tote bag, a black one. But my feelings before all that come out, I was hoping, and I was thinking that Kelsey was alive when she come out of that townhouse. Way before all this, I was thinking maybe somebody, you know, she was still alive and kept hostage. Something told me she was still alive, but that probably isn't the case. I mean, Crystal is a nurse after all. I think she would know if she was dead or not. So they put her in the black tote bag, and then they put the bag into Patrick Frazie's truck and drive to a barn in Fremont County. They put the body on top of a haystack in the barn. I don't know where Crystal goes at this point, if it's Sonic there, and then Patrick goes to Thanksgiving dinner with his family and daughter. I mean, he's doing this right after he bashes in his fiance's head. But what we do hear is Patrick supposedly had trouble eating dinner, you know, afterwards, whereas Crystal didn't seem to have a problem. After Thanksgiving dinner, Patrick and Crystal drove back to the farm to move Barrett's body. Crystal says that they drove the dead body and still in the black tote bag back to the 35-acre ranch where Patrick Frazee and his mom live. investigators found phone records that actually match that, saying that these phones did travel together at that time during the day. I guess they drive down that long dirt driveway until Patrick Frazee comes to a trough where he put him and Crystal both put that body in the trough, loaded it with wood, some kind of oil, and set it ablaze. Crystal helped Patrick burn all the evidence as well, including the bat that killed Barrett, anything, the tooth, the bags, the trash, everything was burned. Crystal said they wanted to make it look like Kelsey went away, maybe killed herself, and claimed Patrick instructed her to turn Kelsey's phone off and on. Crystal said after that they scooped up the remains and it went into the dump or the river. That is not clear. It's not even close to being clear. Where Kelsey Barrett's remains are still the biggest mystery of this whole thing. Now, Crystal did lead investigators around later, way after all this. She got caught. She knew she got caught. So she knew her only option at this point was, to partially tell the truth. And that's what she did. So she showed investigators where Barrett's body was burned in the trough, and the arson investigators said that there was definitely a burn outline and pattern, of where she once was. Now, they also investigated, they got a search warrant for the house that Patrick lived in, and they found custody papers from August, about the same time Patrick started talking to Crystal, pretty heavy again. They found those papers on December 13, but the custody case was never really filed. Crystal took investigators also on a replay of all their footsteps. So that includes the romance and everything else that they had going on for, the period of time this was all happening. I really feel like Patrick was using her. And I think she started to realize that because on the affidavit, I can't remember after which murder attempt she did, she told Chad, that her ex-husband, that I think I've been set up. And I say to her, yes, you were his pawn, but he was also your pawn. And her role was being the evil godmother trying to fulfill his wishes. Now, I'm going to have to end this video right here, but the next video, I want to go over the other people that were involved. And we had the Rockstalls. We had a few of her friends that are involved with this. We have, like that Volkswagen Jetta. There's some pretty interesting information about that as well. And I want to say, you know what, guys, I appreciate you guys watching and sharing and commenting. It really makes my day, because these things are a lot more work than I expected. And for some reason, I feel like I need to keep putting them out there. You know what? It helps me out. I enjoy it. And I want to say I appreciate you guys. And be looking for part 3. All right. Good night, guys. I am tired. It is midnight. I want to get off here.
Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.